Welcome to Courtsiders. I'm your host, Eric. With me, I have Dimitri.
What's up, guys? How you doing today?
Long time. It's been a hiatus for us, but the NBA season is back and in full form, and so many storylines are happening right now. There are vaccines, Ben Simmons, there's Minnesota Timberwolves, fucking sex orgy, whatever situation they're in, but it's hot right now, and the season starts in less than a month. So we'll start on the first topic, which is the frustration of Ben Simmons in Philadelphia. So now everyone's kind of hot right now. Joel Embiid just came out today with this quote. I mean, it's not even a quote, it's like a fucking novel, but I'll read a part of it. I feel like over the years, the way our team has been built around, you look at last year, the whole starting lineup shot. I was the worst 3 point shooter in the starting lineup, and I shot 38% from three. We've always had shooters, and I feel like I can really play with anybody. I can make anybody better on the court. I don't necessarily need shooters, but I feel like over the years, you look at when we signed Al because we needed a stretch five just to make sure that there was one. Most of my career, I've had to kind of step out of to the 3 point line, which I don't mind. I like to be a basketball player. I like to do everything on the basketball court. So this is in relation to the Ben Simmons situation, and I think he is frustrated as a franchise player, and it's just he's in a weird position, right? Because he is kind of the face of the franchise, and he also said, "quote It was kind of surprising to see." We'll say that even going back, I mean, the reason we signed Al, we got rid of Jimmy, which I still think was a mistake, just to make sure he needed the ball in his hands, and that's the decision they made. Like I said, it is surprising, and this is him talking about Ben Simmons wanting out, Ben Simmons saying that, and Rich Paul basically saying, you know, we want to be somewhere else. We're not going to play for Philadelphia this year. And you and I have different kind of perspectives about the whole situation in Philadelphia. So I think that they're not in the wrong place, kind of criticizing Ben Simmons for his faults because I think criticism is important to growth. I think without criticism, there is no growth in any kind of profession or any situation. It just depends on how you process criticism. And I think every person processes criticism differently. Some people turn that into positive energy. Some people dwell on that and they sulk in it and they get angry, right? And I think Ben Simmons is in the second part of that. But you think in a different perspective. So let's hear it out. We'll hear Dimitri's POV on the Ben Simmons Philadelphia situation.
I think realistically, there is reason for them to be mad at him, but also I do think the way, Philly has been treating him personally has led to a lot of this kind of rift between him and the city. I do believe at a certain point, honestly, if things had been kind of cooled down and dropped a bit more, um, there was a chance that maybe Ben could come back to camp and things could work out. I mean, we saw it with the Aaron Rodgers thing, when Daryl Morey said that. But I think that just the way Philly has handled these conferences, like the media wise, just the comments they've been making about him and what Doc said after the game. Like I don't think passing up the shot and passing it to Matisse Thybulle, that's one thing, right? And I think if it's just that play and Ben, takes it on him after that, and then the offseason is quiet, I think he can come back to Philly as much as fans would talk and would be annoyed. I think they would come back, but I think it's all the external stuff that happened after that play that really led to things falling apart the way they have.
Things fall apart. This is true. Especially in NBA, things do fall apart. And yeah, I think I do agree with you the fact that Doc Rivers, I think he was a little too quick to the trigger when talking about Ben Simmons. And I think after that, it was all damage control. So sometimes, Doc Rivers is straightforward and when he doesn't need to be. And sometimes he's not straightforward when he needs to be. So it's a weird contradiction between with Doc Rivers, he's always been that way, but I do think right after the series, he was just tight. He was so angry that that happened that he was just like, "Fucking Ben Simmons, why did he do that? Why did he do that?" Like he was just completely out of his head. Right? It's almost as he probably didn't even know he even said that afterwards. He's like, "I said that about Ben. Damn, like, damn, Elton Brand, my bad, Elton. No, So like after that, it was Ben Simmons. It was just like, all right, I'm gonna play Call of Duty. I'm blocking everyone on, I'm blocking everyone on WhatsApp. Everyone's getting blocked. And I mean, you even saw that story where people were like, we're all hopping on this jet to meet Ben Simmons, and Ben Simmons is like, I don't want to see y'all. I don't
No,
want to
sir.
see y'all. So he was. I mean, if you're to that point, it's a wrap. And also, I know you're from Canada, but Philadelphia is not an easy city to play sports in. It's like New York. It's metropolitan area basically, and they're the fans passionate. Really, I mean,
Yeah,
you
that whole like
they'll
Philly,
throw,
Boston kind of New York area goes crazy for sports.
and I think he's scared. I'm not like scared. He's a fucking 6'9" person. He shouldn't be scared. But if there's like 20 Philadelphia fans versus Ben Simmons, I would take the 20 Philadelphia fans. So it's just a rough town to be bad in, to kind of I think they feel insulted. Like Philadelphia feels insulted by Ben Simmons, and therefore there is vitriol there. There's anger there, right? And that anger is heard through the media, like the Philadelphia media. They're all destroying Ben Simmons right now. Right now it's all pro Joel Embiid, you
And
know?
I do think some of that has led to Ben wanting to leave. I think some of that has led to Ben feeling uncomfortable. And that's kind of what I mean when I say, I think maybe like 30% of the damage was done by that miss, that passing up the layup. But I think it's like 70%, maybe 65% of that damage has been done from just the Philly media and the way the Sixers have actually handled the situation post that game.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that was probably the last straw for Ben Simmons. He probably also used it as an excuse to go to a warm city. He was probably like, all right, I'm playing my ass off and I'm freezing my ass off in South Street. And now they're shitting on me. I'm going to Calabasas with my girlfriend, you know? So now he wants to play. Yeah. So in a situation, Ben Simmons has always been coddled. This is known. He's always he was always headlines, LSU, even high school. Like, he's a high draft pick, so he's always been coddled. Um, and I think it's reached a point where you're hearing a lot of even your own teammates, especially the superstar on that team, is saying, "We made a mistake trading Jimmy Butler. We had shooters. It doesn't matter. I could play with anyone. I don't need shooters. I could have 5 scrubs on my team, 4 scrubs on my team. I could still make them better." Him saying that is low key shots at Ben Simmons. It's him saying, "I'm so good that it doesn't matter who's around me. It doesn't matter. They could do anything they want. They can't stop me." So, in a sense, Ben Simmons and Rich Paul. Rich Paul's a big, big piece here. It's a big, big piece here to the machine. He is a big cog, right? Like Rich Paul is a big cog. He is a gear within a machine that makes it go. He's one of the biggest agents in sports, not even just in basketball. He's one of the biggest agents in sports, and he has a lot of power, and he uses the hammer all the time. He used it with Anthony Davis. He could use it in many ways. So he knows what he's doing. He knows what he's doing. Eventually, Ben Simmons is going to be a Laker. Like, eventually, it might not be 2 years and maybe like 5 years down the road. It's going to happen. And I think, I think a lot of people aren't talking about that. I think he's going to obviously move to a California team. And one of the California teams that everyone's kind of guessing is the Sacramento Kings, which you are a big fan of. So, and I think it makes sense
I think
because
that's a good segue to move on to like the kind of second part of the Ben Simmons conversation, which is like the teams that are interested. Kind of got a list compiled here, sort of what their trade offers would look like. I don't know if you want to touch on that.
yeah, you could start with the Sacramento Kings, which is I think one of the teams that people are sort of sniffing around, and I think from some of the new quotes coming out of that Ben Simmons camp, it seems like he wants to have more power and more control over, I guess roster build and stuff like that, or just he wants to be the darling child. He wants to be the poster boy. He wants to have better branding. He wants to have better, advertising, especially within himself. So they're one of the teams. What do you think the proposal is?
I think when you're looking at what the proposal is, it's probably realistically, depending on what the Sixers want to do with their roster spots, I'd be willing to offer. It depends because I think they want two guys back in this trade, but we'd be willing to offer up to three. But when you're looking at the pool of players, it's you're going to pick 3 out of 4 of these players: Buddy, Barnes, Davion, and Bagley. Those 4 guys are going to be sort of the guys that Philly gets to choose from. Whichever package they want will differ from whichever Philly fan you ask, to be honest. Some guys will tell you, oh, we don't want 3 guys. We want to save our roster spots. I just want Buddy and Barnes. Some guys will say, I want Buddy and Davion. Some guys will say, I want Bagley and Davion. Some guys will say, I want Bagley and Barnes. Or they'll say a combination of the 3. It really differs depending on which fan you ask. But at the end of the day, it's going to be some combination of those guys, those 4. And then you're going to add probably 2 firsts and maybe a pick swap there for the Sixers to take. Some fans would say they only want to give 1 first. Realistically, I think when it comes down to it, Philly isn't going to get 3, 4 firsts for Ben, but I think they'll get 2. I do think they'll get 2. I think they'll be protected, but I think they'll get 2 firsts from us. But it'll be those guys, and then it'll be some picks and swaps, basically, maybe some seconds. That's what I imagine the deal being when you look at us in the Sixers, personally.
Yeah, and I honestly don't think that's a bad trade at all. I think you're getting 4 players that are really valuable to your squad, especially added to the fact that you have all these other pieces in place in Philadelphia. So yeah, that would be a team that can be scary because of the depth, just in case. And you're getting Buddy Hield, one of the best 3-point shooters in the NBA. You're getting Bagley, who has potential if he stays healthy. You have a seasoned veteran in Barnes, and you have a really, really expected to be great player in Davion Mitchell. So, and you're getting 2 firsts. So basically, you're getting a good deal out of the Sacramento Kings. I think the other team was the Timberwolves, who are in current turmoil in a sense. So, um, and they have, I don't know if they have enough compared to the Sacramento Kings. Maybe they have more draft capital, but maybe they have less talent because they don't want
They
to pay more.
actually they're a little bit more restricted in their picks than us, due to giving pet picks in the past, I believe. So I believe they're a tad more restricted than we are in their picks. I could be wrong there, but yeah. And also, I mean, I just don't think their package, like you said, is as good as ours necessarily. They're offering like Malik Beasley and like maybe Jaden McDaniels, though I've heard they kind of want to stick on to him as well. And maybe like what, Torian Prince or Pat Bev. That's not better than Buddy Hield and Harrison Barnes, just as a package, honestly. And we just have more power and more flexibility with our picks. So yeah, I just don't think it happens. As for the Blazers, it's just going to be a question of whether they want to give CJ up or not.
Yeah, I mean that's the only one that's kind of that would make sense. CJ for Ben Simmons, even though CJ is a shooter, he has a lot of playoff
Well,
experience, I guess, at this point. But in a
Ben liked a picture of him, or sorry, not Ben. Dame liked a picture of him and Ben together on the court. I don't know if you saw that. It was a jersey swap of him and Ben, and CJ wasn't in the picture. Just a little tidbit there.
yeah, I mean they probably did a good job photoshopping him, but um, yeah, no, I mean Ben Simmons and Dame Lillard, I guess would make sense, but also I think there's been the Blazers have been in trouble in the postseason because other players other than Dame Lillard couldn't score against a team. So if you're putting Ben Simmons next to Dame Lillard, like I don't know if that's gonna fix that situation because as patterns hold, you know, Ben Simmons is not gonna score 25 a game come playoff time. So it might solve regular season problems for the Blazers, but I don't think it'll solve that postseason problem where you just saw, Dame Lillard got gassed when they were playing Denver Nuggets, I believe. Just gassed because he was just putting it all on the court, and other players just didn't have it. So I don't know how it would work. Like, would Yusuf Nurkic still be there with Ben Simmons? Like, does that flow well? I'm actually not sure. So as as much as Portland has been kind of linked to Ben Simmons, I think Sacramento actually makes the most sense, you know, especially location wise and assets wise, because Morey's not going to give up Ben Simmons for just, scraps. He's just not. Um, and I think Sacramento has the best package to give, even though that would put Sacramento in a kind of vulnerable state because even at this point, they don't really have too many basketball players on their team, and you're taking away, three or four.
I mean, I
So
wouldn't give all four. I said two or three of those guys, two of three of those four guys. So like two or three of the four Davion, Bagley, Buddy, Barnes.
it'll probably be like three of them, most likely. Three of them,
Most,
two first rounds. Yeah.
I mean, Philly already has 15 guaranteed contracts. They'd have to cut guys just to take on those guys. So if they're only, of course, that's only if they're sending only Ben.
It could also be a three-team trade. You know.
Yeah, like I've seen people say like we send Davion and Buddy to Philly and then send Bagley to Toronto and they send Goran to Philly. I've seen stuff like that. So
Yeah, I think that makes more sense. I think three-team makes more sense if that happens just because of salary cap situations. And yeah, Ben Simmons gets paid a lot, so you might need an extra team for that with picks. But I think yeah, like Minnesota might not make sense, and then Portland might not make sense. I think Sacramento definitely makes sense.
there's a few
Um,
decent fringe teams there though. Like I mean you've got the Spurs, the Hawks, the Hornets, the Cavs, and the Pacers. I don't know if you want to talk about one of those teams, but there's definitely
yeah,
a few fringe teams there.
I think San Antonio probably will make more sense for Ben Simmons. They do have a
Yeah,
lot
they
of
have a real shot. They
they
have a
have
real shot.
they have things that will look really well on other teams. They have their basically their team is so guard heavy that if you're guard needy, I think that's the team to kind of look for, right? Especially if you're the Philadelphia 76ers where you're kind of in limbo with that point guard situation. So I think there's a couple players on San Antonio that would make sense on the 76ers and I think Pop would really work well with Ben Simmons, I think. And there's someone that could unlock that Rubik's cube, it's definitely Pop. You know.
Yeah, and they definitely have an interesting offer. I don't know personally if I was a Spurs fan if I'd want to put DeJounte Murray on the table, but I'd definitely be calling and offering like Derek White and like Lonnie Walker and maybe Keldon Johnson, though I'd be questionable about that. Maybe some picks in the future, stuff like that. That's kind of what my offer would revolve around. I don't know if I'd give DeJounte or Vassell personally, because I think DeJounte, Vassell, and Simmons is a really insane defensive core three to go forward with. If you think of like Vassell as your defensive kind of McHale type wing, and then Ben Simmons is like one of your big slots, and then you have DeJounte as one of your guards. Just add a couple more players to that out of the prospects that you already have that you'll have left from the trade, right? And I think that's a really, really interesting starting five right there, personally. So
Yeah, yeah. San Antonio makes sense, and I think Sacramento makes sense, and I think it just makes sense because if Ben Simmons goes to either team, he'll be the biggest celebrity on that team. He might not be the best offensive weapon, but he'll be the poster child of that franchise. And it kind of worked for him. Ego wise, it works for him. I think basketball wise, it works for him, and I think overall for both of those teams, he brings a lot of great tangibles to those franchises. I think so. Um, I think it would make sense with both squads. I think those are the most realistic teams, at least for my end. Anything else would be really surprising. Honestly, it would be like I would be super surprised. Maybe Houston, because Maury has
What
a
about
connection.
the Cavs? You don't think he could make the Cavs his team, say, if they centered a trade around Sexton and then you bring Ben in? I know it's tough to fit that spacing when you've got Okoro and Mobley and Allen, but say down the line you move Okoro and Allen, right? And you have like a stretch five in Mobley with Simmons and Garland. Maybe that's the start of something with those three particularly. You play Mobley and Simmons together, right? And then you have Garland and of course you've traded Sexton to get Simmons. You'd have to move Allen and Okoro and do a little bit of roster retooling, but I, I don't hate it long term.
I think Cavs. It pains me to say this, but I think the Cavs know what they're doing and they like their roster right now. I'm pretty sure it's gonna work out this year for them. Um, I think Garland is one of those players that low key could be one of the like one of those better point guards, shooting guard combos that we have in the NBA. If Sexton kind of processes things a little bit better, I think makes better decisions. I think that team could make the playoffs, like seventh or eighth seed. So I think they like what they're doing right now, like what they have. I'm pretty sure the Mobley Allen combo is going to be a beast defensively. It really is going to be a beast defensively. I think I'm excited to watch both of them. It's going to be tough scoring in the paint versus that team. And you bring Ben Simmons, and then you just have to kind of redo everything. So in a sense, for me, the Cleveland Cavaliers aren't as in limbo as some other teams. San Antonio Spurs, I don't really see an identity from them, and Sacramento, I think they're trying to build an identity. So I think, and the assets just work for Maury. At the end of the day, you know, um, he had Ben Simmons doesn't have the upper hand here, so it really does depend on those assets for the management. So I think that's what I have for the trades right now for Ben Simmons.
Yeah, I think we can move on if you want to the second topic.
Yeah, we can move on. Enough Ben Simmons. Enough Australia.
I'm done with him for now. I've
Yeah,
seen too much on my timeline. I need to like just
watch
cleanse my timeline, dude. There's been too much. I just
Ben
want it to
Simmons
happen so I
detox.
can stop. I just want it to like happen so the timeline could stop having the same conversation like every 8 hours.
We can move on to the vaccination proclamation of the fucking NBA.
Oh man, oh man. I don't know if you saw the little list I concocted here. If I missed anybody off that list, let me know. But I kind of tried to compile every sort of like big player that really spoke about the vaccine negatively, so we could have a little list of guys to goof on.
No, you could go. I mean, yeah.
I mean, yeah, many NBA players are just hella anti-vax right now. We've got Bradley Beal, Jonathan Isaac, Andrew Wiggins, Kyrie Irving, who's I believe, looking at these crazy conspiracy theories, just out of this world conspiracy theories, and Michael Porter Jr., who yesterday said he just didn't feel comfortable taking the vaccine. So, yeah, there's a lot of guys out there that are speaking their mind a little too much, I think. And just, I don't think we'll get there with 100% vaccination in the NBA, unfortunately.
Well, the vaccination rate went from 90 to 95 and 95% in a week, and that's because they were like, "Hey, the games you miss, you will not get paid for." And people are like, "Hold up, what?
Yeah,
What that?
though
That might,
I
you
will.
know."
Yeah, I mean, I think it will get most guys, to be honest with you. But I think there will be guys like, if there was any guy that I had to bank on in the NBA getting a religious exemption for this, it would be John Isaac, because he's just prior to that, like the vaccine coming out, he wasn't vaccinated. He's been like a stout, like non-vaccinated person, like, or whatever, not stout, but like staunchly unvaccinated person. Yeah, no, I don't think I think he might get an exception, but I can't see it for everybody else. And even then, it's like he should realistically probably still be vaccinated. But
Yeah, I don't believe that he's not vaccinated because if you're playing in college, if you're playing high school sports, if you're playing any type of sport and any recreational thing, you have to be vaccinated. It's I think this is where I think you come into a position where, you know, I think most of your life, you're told what to do, growing up. You're not in a position of power. You might not have money, so you might have jobs that are terrible and people are telling you what to do all the time. So when you come up in the hierarchy of society, you now have the power to say no to things, right? When people are trying to force you to do something, now you have so much money and power and position that you can just say no, I don't want to do it, even if you don't understand the subject. And that's the position that we're in right now, where I think these players have so much power in the NBA, that they have the blinders on, right? People are saying, well, vaccination saves people. It might not save you because you are a superior athlete and are 22 years old. The virus might not hit you as hard, right? Probability wise, numbers wise. But if you don't vaccinate yourself, you have a high probability of catching the virus and transmitting it to someone who is older and more vulnerable than you are. And I think that's where the message gets lost. And I think there's misinformation is one of the most dangerous weapons of our modern times. And that's coming from a person like me who has been using a computer since he was 9. I am 30 now. So 21 years of using computer. I saw it from AOL 1999 till what it is right now with AI. So I've seen it almost in full bloom, right? And within the internet, there are people that are more subject to conspiracy theories, aka men. Supposedly, men are more prone to conspiracy theories than women, which is I highly believe that because when you see players talking about microchips within vaccines, uh, it just boggles my mind because there's information out there, real information, white papers published by, not even the CDC, but Stanford, big colleges, scientists, before vaccines. I'm pretty sure like your life quality of life was terrible, and compared to what we have now, life expectancy was way less. And I think NBA players, should study history a little bit more thoroughly and not just go through YouTube and look at someone named like anti-vax dinosaur and it's like, oh, I believe him. Yeah. Oh, where'd you get your research from? It's like, oh, anti-mama 95 told me that there's microchips and 5G and vaccines. It's not that. I mean, like, the situation is that in the NBA right now, people are saying, well, I really don't trust the vaccine, so I'm going to do my own research and think about this. But in reality, they're not going to really do research, right? You're not when I get a vaccine, I'm not, reading books and books of molecular science. I read a couple of things and I read the history of vaccines and understand what they're for. I think the biggest problem that we have right now, especially in the NBA, is that I think there's skewed definition of vaccine for players. I think in their head they think vaccine means cure when vaccine is not a cure. It just lowers the probability of you catching something. Like the polio vaccine. Polio vaccine is, it was created, I would say it's 50, about 60 something years old. I'm actually, yeah, it's almost like 70 years old, right? So the probability of catching polio now, it's almost gone, polio, right? It's still alive, but I think you have like a zero point 0.8 chance of catching polio. So the vaccine, I think people in the NBA, like I, Wiggins and, MPJ, I think as a reporter, as a media member, I think they're not asking the right questions as well. I think it's almost like this. It's just almost like this confrontational thing with reporters and NBA players when it should be more educational than confrontational. So I think when the reporter asked Jonathan Isaac about the vaccine, right? It gave Jonathan Isaac the perfect position to kind of implement his own response, which he has been working on for. You can just tell he's been working on it for a while. So it gives him the perfect opportunity as a journalist to ask him the right questions afterwards, right? Okay, so if you have been doing your research, how many people have died in America during this pandemic? How many people unvaccinated have died during this pandemic? And then when they give the wrong response, you can just say, "Well, I don't think you have done the right research." That's how that's how you're supposed to kind of connect, right? And when they realize that they're reading the wrong information, that's when they go back and actually read the right information. So I think this whole concept of confrontation instead of education is actually regressive in our society right now. So it's almost like some people, this is the thing, everyone's an individual, right? Everyone has different education, everyone has different information. So I think you have to
That's
kind of
really well said, man.
connect a link between you and them to have common ground on on a subject. And I think that's where, yeah, and I think that it we're just kind of all over the place as a society. And I think when I see someone that doesn't believe in vaccines, I try to understand why they don't believe in vaccines, because I believe in obviously they're real, right? But I think they haven't read enough history about vaccines, about pandemics, to fully understand the scope of what a vaccine actually is. So I think misinformation, like I said before, is a terrible. It's one of the biggest weapons that the internet has right now, and I think it's devolving into having less of a connection to another human being because I think, yeah, it's a complicated issue.
Well, and I think politicizing a lot of shit that doesn't need to be politicized is a lot of the problem as well. It's just like a lot of this shit has become like almost self-harming just for like, oh, I could say I owned the libs. Like, I don't know, it's getting really dangerous. And like I just think people like Tucker Carlson and like Newsmax and shit, they're just like full out sociopaths, honestly. Like just to know what they're doing to society and just continue on is fucking bananas to me.
Yeah, no, yeah, like, it sucks that when I see these young kids, because they're younger than I am, so I could call them younger kids. But when I see them just kind of saying, "Oh, I really don't trust the vaccines. I'm not comfortable taking the vaccine. I'm doing my own research on the vaccine." I, it just feels I don't get angry. Some people are like, "Oh, take it, take it, take it, take it, take it, take it. I'll poke you in the arm right now." But I just feel sad because I'm like, who are they surrounded with that makes them think this way? You know, and then you have Kyrie Irving, who
How disappointing was that as a Nets fan?
he couldn't make it to he couldn't make it to media day because he wasn't allowed to be in the arena, right? And that's when everyone's like, he down bad, and everyone knew. I mean, if I was if I was in Vegas and they were like, who are you gonna bet on to be anti-vax or just not get the vaccine, I'd be like, Kyrie Irving, Kyrie Irving, So it wasn't surprising. It was just fucking disappointing in reality because he Kyrie Irving helps a lot of communities that don't have a lot of money, and he gives a lot of money to people, to families, to homes. He does a lot for the community. In all honesty, he does a lot for community. So when he comes in and does something like this, it's kind of like regressive because vaccination in areas where there is less accumulation of wealth is a big issue and problem because they've never trusted the government before, and why would they trust them now, right? So when a person or a role model like Kyrie Irving is just like, I'm not comfortable, I don't really trust the vaccine, whatever. um it's kind of disappointing because that kind of connects to other people as well. So yeah, it's just super disappointing. I think everyone's disappointed in that. And you see Kevin Durant and they're gonna just keep asking questions to the whole team. So eventually, they're gonna get tired of answering the questions for Kyrie Irving, and I think he, if he hasn't already, I think he will get vaccinated. I know there's a lot of people saying like he won't, but I think the peer pressure or just or just asking your, not your neighbors, but the people that you spend most of your like life with, which are your teammates right now, um, asking them, questions, and hopefully the players he's surrounded with give him the correct answers and make him feel more comfortable taking the vaccine, which will help not only him but the team and the people around him. So he won't get a religious exempt either. So I would be surprised if anyone gets a religious exempt. Honestly, the
Yeah,
Wiggins
that was
thing was
dumb.
ridiculous because Wiggins is trying to do a religious, like, come on, man.
But if anyone does get it, I'm just like speculating, right? Like you said earlier, if you had to bet any money on anybody not, and anybody sharing conspiracy theories about the vaccine, it would have been Kyrie. If I had to do the same thing and bet on any player that would get a religious exemption based on players I've known to be heavily religious before, it would be Jonathan Isaac. That would be the one player that I would bet on. But other than that, I don't think anybody else would.
But why though? I mean, like, well, why? Like, why? He's not. I mean, I've never. I mean, okay, like you wear a big cross, okay, like that doesn't mean like you're hella religious. Like I could wear a big cross tomorrow, you know.
Well, I mean, he preaches. He has his own like church and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, okay, but I think even if you have a church, it doesn't matter, man. I mean, I think, yeah, I mean, I think we could get into the whole religious concept thing, but there's nothing, there's nothing in biblical verses.
Vaccinated either. But I think realistically, he's going to be pushed not to be vaccinated. And he's like the most religious NBA player I know. So if they were to grant an exception, I'm just saying I see it being him.
I mean, but also I mean, the way he responded to the first kind of wave of the questions when he was just like,
Trump. Yeah.
"Yeah, I've been
Yeah.
watching,
Oh,
Trump's
God.
presser." I was like, "Oh, I was like,
Yeah.
whose man is
I know.
this?
He's
Whose
brain
man
rot.
is this?" Like, man, that's the last thing
Yeah.
I want to hear. If I mean, just because I can't hear anything after that. You know what I mean? Like, if you were, what do you learn from Trump conferences or press conferences? I mean, he does know how to gaslight. I mean, maybe he learned it from him. I don't know, but he gaslit the fuck out of that media, and everyone was like,
And he's gonna do it with religious PR too. That's the thing. Like I just know Isaac is gonna push this really, really hard. So if anyone's going to get it, it's going to be him, though I don't think any player, I want to be just clear that I don't think any player in the NBA does deserve it that
"Nah,
I
man.
know
I
of.
think, yeah, like I get the whole personal choice and privacy and all of that stuff. But at the end of the day, it's not um an isolated sport. So if, yeah, I went over why, but I think it's just kind of selfish if you don't do it. It's I get it, but it is selfish. And
Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if Kyrie's in that 5% that went up to the. I think Kyrie
yeah, I
will be
saw him
convinced.
practicing with people, so he might have got the first shot.
I mean, there were like kind of like word out of Brooklyn where they were like, yeah, it seems like Kyrie's kind of like Kevin Durant's going to talk him into it or something. I saw something briefly about KD having to talk Kyrie into it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's what I'm saying. I think he's gonna eventually, you know, he might just do it just to win that championship, maybe retire after. Who knows? Anyway, Denver Nuggets maxed an unvaxxed player. Max the vax,
Yeah, it's
MPJ.
pretty wild. I mean, I just wonder like, are any of these players going to be traded due to this as well? Like, it's an interesting implication, like especially with Wiggins, right? Because I believe it's San Francisco and Brooklyn, or like New York. I forgot.
New York and California, yeah, it's a mandatory
Thought I thought it was
vaccine.
just
Yeah.
San Francisco. I know it's not 100. Really, I know not 100% of the Kings are vaccinated. And oh, this is actually while we're on this, this is actually if I had to bet on anybody on the Kings not being vaccinated, there's an obvious guy that should come to mind for me and you.
Bagley? Is it
No,
Bagley?
no, it's the guy who used to cut holes in his mask and spread COVID misinfo before. He used to play on the Raptors. Terrence Davis himself.
Uh,
There's no. No way Terrence Davis is vaccinated. If somebody on our team isn't vaccinated, there's no way. It's got to be him, right? Like from everything we've seen in the past, he's already like spread like COVID misinformation, and he's cut holes in his mask in the bubble and stuff like that. And man, I'm convinced it's probably him. So that might be a problem considering we're one of the California teams. But I thought it was just San Francisco, which is why the Warriors were worried.
It might just be it's city of San Francisco, but I thought it was California too. But it might be different rules because the state and stuff like that. But yeah, we can
Either
move
way,
on.
they won't be able to play. Terrence Davis won't be able to play. I think we have one of our first 5 games of the season is against the Warriors. I don't know if it's in Sacramento or if it's in San Francisco, but if it's in San Francisco, it's going to be really interesting to see if Terrence Davis is like who's not in that game. It's going to be a really interesting thing to note.
Yeah. I mean, it's gonna suck. I mean, but we'll see. I mean, I'm glad that the percentage went up by 5%, which is a lot in the amount of a week. So I'm pretty sure you're not gonna get paid if you don't, if you miss games and you're not vaccinated. And people are like, damn. Also, they came out with the rule with that whole PDF that it's gonna be a tough life if you're not vaccinated, if you're traveling with a team, because you can't really like work out with them and you can't eat with them and you have to be isolated. So yeah, it takes 0.5 seconds to get it, and it'll help everyone. So
It does, and
we'll
it's
move.
such a relieving feeling when you do.
It's such a relieving feeling,
Like if
but
anyone is listening to this and they're not vaccinated, actually like go get vaccinated, man. Like it's like when you are done with the shot and you have to get up and you just go home and it's like, man, like fuck, it feels so good to I have this weight taken off of your back that's been like this worry for the past few years. Like, man, like what if I get sick and what if I just knowing that you're gonna be like okay, even if you do get sick and that your chances of getting sick have gotten considerably lower. Just it feels so good, man. It does.
yeah, I mean, I mean, I feel like I got stronger that whole week. I was just juiced, you know what I mean? So
Yeah,
we'll
your
move
arm
on.
hurts for like a day. It's not. It's like your arm feels like it has a bruise on it for like maybe a day, and then you're good. You don't.
I
For me, I didn't feel sick at all. I had no side effects like that. So
I got one vaccine the 29th of March. I got the other vaccine April 15th, and my birthday is the 16th. And I drove from New Jersey to North Carolina, so about like 9 hours after the vaccine. My arm was just sore. I was a little dehydrated, but having the second one is really a good feeling because okay, even if I get COVID, I probably won't go to the hospital. And I think if you have a fear of hospitals or you just have a fear of, my friend was in the hospital recently from COVID. He got ammonia. He was pretty bad. He was in there for like a month. So scary times, man. If even and he had the vaccine, so um, it was just a bad situation. But everyone's immune system is kind of different too, so you have to be wary of that. But we'll move on to the next subject, which is
Timberwolves orgy. Basically, T Wolves execs are smashing coworkers on company time, aka uh, supposedly, not Sachin, Gershon Rosas went to a game and was like doing inappropriate stuff in the office with somebody who was already married, and so is he. Like he's also married, so it was just a big problem all around. And I think the T Wolves, having new ownership and all that, they just wanted to clear that up. And honestly, if I were to pick an assistant GM that like was one of the strongest assistant GMs to take over, it would have been one of the guys that's been sort of interviewed around the league for multiple jobs right now, and a guy that created the trade machine, a guy that has been rumored or not rumored, but sort of you hear in these league talks, right, that he's always coming up with these trades and that he's always unifying people and bring them under a big tent sort of thing. That's the word I hear used a lot, big tent. He's a guy that's able to bring a bunch of people with different ideologies, and he's able to canvas those all out and create this kind of landscape of opinions that creates, you have all these variabilities, and then you can pick out of those all these options, out of the box thinking what would be the best option for your team going forward. So he's a guy that I think if you were to pick anybody to take over your team, I mean the Minnesota Timberwolves are at a pretty good spot right now. And if this was happening with Rosas and the way he was treating, I mean I was even reading an article that said like him and Sachin, who's his assistant GM by the way, weren't on talking terms. It got to a point where Sachin was suggesting stuff and Kirsten wasn't even listening to him and told him like he couldn't even come in the office anymore. And it was just like, it got really bad, to be honest. It was a really toxic environment. And if it's like that, I can understand new owners wanting to clear that out immediately coming in. If there's just a guy that's power tripping, you don't want to set that precedent. So even if he gets along well with players, you don't want to set that precedent for his staff. Nobody deserves to be treated that way, especially, with the movements that we've seen for equality in the workplace recently.
Yeah, it's interesting because everything's like remote, and there's still a lot of these issues going on. So, I'm kind of interested to see what uh, this guy brings to the table because Trade Machine's huge, dude. So, I mean, if you created that, you're kind of, I wouldn't say you're ahead of the curve analytically, but you kind of are. So I would like to see what he does with the team. But it's probably not good news for Carl Anthony Towns, who is just, he's been through so much
And I think he
during
liked
his
Roses. I think he had
there.
found some
Yeah,
stability there.
he loved Rosas, but I mean, just he's been through a lot for that franchise, and it's never consistent with the Timberwolves, and it's always like, you know, something always happens. I mean, hopefully this year is a little bit, they bounce back from last year. They grow. I think they will grow. In all honesty, and I think Finch is a good coach. So we'll see what happens with the Timberwolves. Well, I wanted to also speak about some little moves. Perry to the Raptors and Alizé to the Bulls. Obviously, Alizé Johnson couldn't be with the Nets because they're just so loaded, and they wanted to give him an opportunity elsewhere. And I think the Raptors going after Perry makes sense as well. So
Huge
Raptors,
opportunity, by the way, for Alizé.
yeah, Raptors are part of
I mean,
your neck of the woods. So we can
yeah,
start with him.
sure. I mean, just to touch on Alizé to the Bulls really quickly first. I mean, Alizé to the Bulls is crazy when you consider now that Pat Will is going to be sitting out for a while with that ankle injury as well. I mean, if you're looking at guys defensively that are going to fit that need of a, sort of flow, sort of a guy that's going to be able to pressure the rim a little bit on the inside and who's going to be able to be a defensive monster. I mean, you're looking at like basically Derrick Jones Jr. maybe starting, maybe Alizé. Like, I'm not sure who they would play at the four right now that Pat Will is hurt, especially since that has been moved out. So unless there's someone obvious that I'm missing here, I think Alizé is going to get a real good opportunity on the Bulls, and I think he's a perfect fit there to do what he does best. As far as Perry to the Raptors, it's really interesting, honestly. I would rather them keep Perry over Freddie Gillespie. They're going to have to cut Freddie Gillespie to keep him, but I mean Perry's just the better prospect overall. I'm surprised Brooklyn let him go, but I kind of understand seeing like how little roster spots they have, honestly. And he was really disappointing there. I'll just be frank. I was, as a guy who had Perry as a first round talent, albeit I had Paul Reed better than him and other guys. He was in the late first round, like I think past 25. But I was a guy that was a believer in Perry. He was fantastic when he was on that squad with Tyrese Halliburton and Cade Cunningham and Kyra Lewis Jr. And I believe Jalen Green was on that USA team as well. He was the highest point total. He was, I believe, led the team in rebounds. He looked very dominant. So I was quite surprised when he disappointed this much. But bigs do take a little bit longer in the NBA, and it's not like he got that much run in a team that was competing for a championship in Brooklyn. So it'll be interesting to see a younger team like the Raptors, who do have a need at that big position, if he's able to take advantage of that opportunity and work his way through. They do have a very good developmental system, so that really interests me. Reggie Perry to the Raps is a sneaky good pickup, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. They'll definitely have to cut Gillespie, especially the Chicago Bulls are an interesting team. They're gonna be exciting next year. I think they have a lot of players that I enjoy watching, and I think having Lonzo Ball there with everyone else there, it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be a lot of fun. Um, I wanted to pull this up on you because I thought it would be an interesting couple of topics. Who would be your MVP for next year? You know, if you had to kind of just spitball right now.
Ooh, season predictions already. Hmm. That's interesting. I mean, I actually I predicted correctly last year. Fun fact, I predicted Jokic would win last year. So I gotta see. This is you put me on the spot now because this is an official like prediction, right? And yeah, like I want to make the right choice. I almost like I almost want to say Giannis, to be honest with you. Because like I'm trying to think of like who else would be really dominant, right? I mean, Luca, right? Luca or Giannis probably. I'd have to look at them again. I mean, okay. This is gonna be so fanboyish. This is gonna be so fanboyish. Say De'Aaron Fox it just breaks the 15-year drought for Sacramento, right? He already was 27, 5, and 3 last year. Say he's able to do like 30 and 10 and breaks Sacramento's 15-year playoff drought and gets them in like top 5 in the playoffs. Like they're not even a playing team. They're like a top
Look,
5 team.
look, I gamble, right? And I'm telling you,
It's
the Aaron
so
Fox,
unlikely, but like
the Aaron Fox MVP, the money line, it's probably like the odds, probably like plus 10,000 or something.
I will put $5 on it. I'll put 510 on it. On God. Like it's
Yeah, I mean if you put $5, you probably get a good penny for it. But
there's a lot of positive media attention to be had by breaking Sacramento's 15-year playoff drought. I'm just saying, like, there legitimately is a lot of like, I think there would be a lot of press on that because it's the longest playoff drought in like sports history. I'm pretty sure. So
no, I think there's too many. That uh, he would have to have a season
he was
that would
27 and
be
7, I believe, or
it
something,
would it would no it would have, he would have to have a
or
bonker
25,
season. He would have to have a bonker season because of
25 and 7.
the stature of other names. You know what I mean? Like he doesn't have the same stature as he would have to have like a 32 and like 8 season or some shit like that. You
I think
know?
he could like I really think Prime Fox could be a legit 30 and 10 threat. Like I really do. I think he was what 25 and 7 this year. I misspoke earlier. I think I said 27 and 5, but I meant to say 25 and 7. I believe that's what he was at this year. I honestly believe that he could hit that. I mean, it's going to be harder if he gets better players on his team, which is what we need to like surround him and actually make the playoffs. But if he goes beast mode this year, I could see it. I do think it's Luca or Giannis, though. If I'm seriously speaking, I do think it's Luca or Giannis. But like my dark horse would be De'Aaron Fox, and I'll say that I'm biased. Like everybody that listens to this fucking podcast knows that I'm biased.
That's such a biased take. I thought you were gonna say like Kevin Durant. I was like, okay, that makes sense. Curry, that makes sense. Um, I
No,
think I think Z- Zach could have an MVP kind of season.
Zach is that'd be cool. I could see that for sure.
Yeah,
Especially, I don't know if
I
he's
think
gonna get
Zach
as many shots though. With
I think Zach could have a MVP type of season because I think there's statistics to back when you play um FIBA ball and you win a gold medal. There's like stats to back it up the next year that you're a little bit better. And especially I think he looked good defensively in FIBA ball. So
yeah, that was the biggest like pleasant surprise if you're a Bulls fan. Like
and I've never been a huge Zach fan, but I think he will go to MVP mode this year, and that would be probably be my dark horse from the Eastern Conference. From the Western Conference, I think Zion could be
even after the foot injury,
even after the foot
sorry,
injury
this surgery, which is something we're probably going to talk about coming.
surgery. Yeah,
What do you think
but
about all that Zion foot surgery?
I don't honestly. I don't have that much to think about it, just because I didn't know much about it, so I can't really think about it that much. But it is interesting. I don't like anytime someone says foot surgery with a big dude like that. So
Yeah, I worry about the trickle down effect of like maybe him coming into the season a little bit heavier because he hasn't been working out, right? Because of the surgery. I worry about if that's going to have any effect on him landing and on his ankle and stuff, and especially if it's already been worked on. I mean, with Zion, it's always a worry about his health and stuff.
yeah, and well, we had another retiree, right? I think JJ Redick retired from the NBA, kind of a little bit late into this month. So, what do you think about that?
My man said, "My playoff streak is done. I'm done," and ended his career. I mean, JJ was always kind of a dick. I mean, we've kind of held this opinion consistently throughout the podcast that JJ's a little bit of a douche and that he uses his media platform to soften his image a little bit. But I mean, he can do what he wants. I'll listen to his podcast if he has a good guest on, but I won't look at it. I'll look out for it for him, I guess. I know some people that enjoy it. That's, they can enjoy that. But I guess good on him for setting up a successful life after basketball, right? Because he's got a whole like podcast network and him and Duncan Robinson and Tyrese Halliburton. And he's really got young players involved too. So he's really set a path for himself towards just being relevant and doing stuff after basketball. So good on him for doing that. But I mean, we've always kind of said he's a little bit of seems like a little bit of a douchebag.
Duke douchebag. That's what I call him. But anyway, c'est la vie. Bon voyage. Merci. Goodbye.
Good riddance.
Um, nah, I mean he was a good basketball player in all honesty. Personality wise, not my favorite. But let's move on to the one of the last subjects that we're talking about. You could start.
Scraps, the leftovers. Like this is the leftovers part of
Yeah.
the podcast. We talk about the moves we missed just barely last week that we're like, or last podcast, I guess. It was just a while ago, right? We missed just a couple moves that were happening at the end of the moratorium and free agency and all that. Just a couple major ones, really. But the Laurie trade and the Hart signing were the two big ones. So I don't know which one you wanted to touch on first.
You could go with the Laurie one. That makes sense.
All right. I should have came better prepared because I'm just gonna pull up the trade right now, guys. Haha. Because I should have wrote down what this trade was. Perfect. Okay. So the Bulls are getting Derek Jones Jr. and they're getting Portland's first rounder and they're getting a Denver 2023 second rounder from the Cavs. And then the Cavs are getting Laurie Markkanen and the Trailblazers are getting Larry Nance Jr. As far as the Trailblazers is concerned, I really like this move. Even though they're giving up a first rounder and Derek Jones. Derek Jones really wasn't doing much, especially, I was kind of interested to see him in a different system in Portland, but I think it just didn't fit regardless of if it was going to be Stotts or Billups. So he was ready for a change of scenery and it made sense there. Portland kind of has to go and get whoever they can to fit with Dame right now because they just need to win right now. So they were able to get themselves Nance, which I think gives them a really interesting look, considering now Nance can shoot. If they want to run him as a small ball five, that gives them with Yusuf Nurkic sitting, they can do that, or they can run him as a four with Nurkic on the floor and go bigger. It just gives them a lot of versatile lineups that they could play. As far as the Bulls side of this, I really like it as well. For the Bulls, out of Laurie Markkanen, which wasn't particularly high on already, doesn't really offer in the way of anything else other than shooting, really. They were able to get something that they need in Derek Jones Jr., which is somebody that can pressure the rim and play defense, which is just going to be great for them. And they got a first rounder, which is what they were looking for alone. Derek Jones Jr. is just icing on the cake, and they get a protected second rounder. So they got really what they wanted and more. So good on the Bulls there. As far as the Cavs, I think it's kind of interesting, honestly. A lot of people call this a lose or a lost trade for the Cavs. Some people say everybody lost this trade. I'm gonna go out and say that I think everybody kind of won this trade. To be honest with you, I think the Cavs. It's really interesting the lineups they can play with Mobley, Allen, and Markkanen now, so they can kind of swap those three. They can play Markkanen and Allen. They can play Markkanen and Mobley. They could play Allen and Mobley. It gets really interesting as to the three lineups, and that basically takes up most of their minutes at the 4-5 anyways. So they have this really nice young big sort of three bigs that they're playing together, as well as their young core, and they just have a lot of young talent. They're bringing it together, and I don't think the cost was crazy. I think the contract they gave him was too much, and that's where you could stipulate, but I think the trade itself, what they gave up, is fine. It's fine. Larry Nance wanted to be a Cav, and I understand that. But if you're trying to turn back the clock and you're trying to go off potential alone, I do understand this move. I have some questions about how much they gave Markkanen.
Yeah, it's a little too much, but I think yeah, for me it was a little too much. But Derek Jones Jr. even though he didn't work out in Portland, I wasn't really mad at how he played in Portland. I mean, I think he just gave it his all. I think he played better defense than he was playing in Miami.
I think they
So
asked too much out of him.
that I think that was a good uptick for him individually. I think he played better defense than I saw him playing previously. With Laurie Markkinen, you know where you're getting with him. You're not really getting anything defensively or rebounding. You're primarily getting a good offensive weapon. Um, I did like the Larry Nance to Portland addition. Stretches the defense out with a big that can shoot the three, a big that rebounds, a big that can still kind of bang in the middle, and he still has the athleticism. So I think I like that with, and he has a proven kind of track record to be on the floor. He doesn't get hurt that often. I'm not sure about how many games he's ever missed, but you typically never see Larry Nance, injured. So I think that's one thing that Portland definitely needs, a big that is on the floor consistently. I think that's what they're missing. I think with Nurkic, who has you know history of injuries and
Well,
other players.
when they've had Dame, with all due respect to Portland, when they had Dame and also had a big that can actually pass and shoot like Nance can.
Not often.
Yeah, pretty much never, right? So it gives them, like I said earlier, so many avenues where they can really make these plays and opens up the playbook to things that we've never seen from Dame before, which I find interesting. And it's going to be on Dame to take advantage of those things in Portland this year.
Yeah, and I'm excited for the NBA season. It's gonna probably be another roller coaster. It's probably gonna be a lot of, you know, a lot of headlines, Lakers, a lot of Brooklyn, everything. So
Yep.
excited for that.
Yep. There's
Excited.
one last signing, and then that's it. Josh Hart. I mean, this is the last thing, right? Like, it's just kind of embarrassing. I don't know if you looked at the contract details here, but originally people were like, "Wow, Josh Hart got 38 million," and then they realized, wait, this is like, so I believe it's a 3-year, $38 million extension, but only the first year is guaranteed, right? It's only $12 million that are guaranteed. And when people looked at it through that lens, like they were like, "Oh wow, Josh Hart got more than expected," but now it's like Josh Hart only got 12 million guaranteed. Like if he gets hurt, like they can just cut him off and he's done. And people are saying like this is one of the worst contracts signed in free agency. His agent was just roasted over the coals. Like I just I've seen some stuff online, man. They poor Josh Hart. I think I do agree. I think he should have gotten at least another year guaranteed on that. I think only getting 1 year guaranteed is not great, but I mean it is 12 million bucks. It's life-changing money at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's still $12 million, dude. I think he'll survive. I think he'll survive.
He'll
You know.
definitely survive, but I mean, getting only 12 out of 38 is disappointing. He should definitely fire his agent, no question.
Yeah, he should use the 12 million and get a new agent. That's what he should do. That's what he should. Well, I mean, there's
Uh,
a lot of teams that could use a Josh Hart, in all honesty. So I
yeah,
like Josh Hart.
I'm just surprised he didn't get more guaranteed money. That's all. Like it's just wild to me that he only got 1 year guarantee. But I guess he got his deal so late in free agency. Maybe he wasn't getting anything better.
Maybe his heart is just not in it. Oh, damn. And that's
Bruh.
how we end, man.
That's yeah. That's you gotta end it. You gotta end it, bro. That's it,
So,
bro.
you could
Holy.
follow you could follow us on Twitter at the Courtsiders. You could listen to this podcast on Apple, on Spotify, on Stitcher, Google, basically, and YouTube. So follow us, listen, thumbs up all the time, comment, hate us, love us, tell us what's wrong with us. Yeah, and have a good night, Dimitri. It's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure, man. I gotta leave after that pun. What the hell was that?
Oh, it's terrible. I know.